Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Tolly here, HBCU Game Day. Not in the studio today, I'm at home. Some big breaking news, not super surprising, but still very impactful. Coming out on this Thursday, Tomekia Reed has left Jackson State as the women's basketball coach. She has accepted the job at Charlotte. She is moving on after 6 seasons at Jackson State. She won 5 regular season titles. She won 3 tournament titles, NCAA tournament 3 times. We remember that game where they were that close, up big on LSU late in the game. Thought they had it won, suffered that heartbreaking loss. They played UConn in the tournament this year. Really upped the seeding of Jackson State. No longer was it, hey, win the SWAC tournament, you're going to get that 16. Moved it up to a 14 seed and really impacted the face of college basketball in the SWAC, the job that Tomekia Reed did at Jackson State. She had 2 players drafted into the WNBA. Amisha Williams-Holiday was drafted by the Indiana Fever, ultimately didn't make the final squad, but she broke a 20-year drought of HBCU players not being drafted into the WNBA, and she did that under the guidance of Tomekia Reed. This past year, Angel Jackson, drafted by the Las Vegas Aces. They're getting ready to start their training camp, and we wish Angel all the best, of course. But again, another product, started her career at USC, transfers into Jackson State, and works her way up to a WNBA draft pick. It is going to be very hard to follow Jackson State's or to follow Tomekia Reed at Jackson State. Guys, she won over 95% of their conference games during her time. The last 5 years, at least, at Jackson State. They were undefeated in conference play this year. Didn't win the tournament every year. We remember Southern had that just coast-to-coast buzzer-beating dramatic shot in the SWAC tournament last year, but Jackson State was not to be held back this year. They got it done. And what we're starting to see here, well, let's back up a little bit. So it was the end of the contract for Tomekia Reed, right? And so they go into negotiations. She interviewed for some other jobs. I think her name came up as a finalist for the Tulane job, I think it was. And there was talks about Jackson State renewing her contract, but the price that they were going to have to come in at, looking at, what was it, like a 4-year deal, looking at $1 million contract, of course, spread out over those years. And that's just not something that happened, but that was her value. And I think if you look at it, like, well, if she gets $1 million contract, then what is TC Taylor, the head coach of football? Like, what is he going to want? And you would see a possibility of those contracts being driven up, which speaks to the value of the coaches. But there's also something that we really have to come to grips with. And this has been a conversation for a while. It's the ability or inability for, now we talk about HBCUs a lot, but a lot of this is because it's at the FCS level. And there's even layers to that as well. But when you get these coaches, we're not in a time now where a successful coach at an HBCU only has an option of going to another HBCU. So I came up in the 90s, and when a coach left, either fired or promoted, an HBCU coach seemingly always ended up as another HBCU as a head coach. Now, we saw some leave and go on to be assistants, but we're living in a time now. You see it, Jackson State, like, Deion Sanders may be an anomaly, a unicorn because of his name coming in, but that is an example. It will always live on paper. An HBCU coach going to an FBS school as a head coach. Tomekia Reed, look, she got it out of the mud. She was not famous coming into Jackson State, but you cannot deny what she was able to do as a coach and that winning percentage, players being drafted, and the program that she put on the court consistently year in and year out. And she has been awarded, and well-deserved, a job that she's obviously going to make more money. It is a bigger school, if you will. Not that Charlotte is like UConn or South Carolina, but who knows where Tomekia Reed's career path and her trajectory will ultimately end, because what she has shown at Jackson State, if that success will follow her, Charlotte, don't don't get too comfortable. There may be even bigger and better, brighter horizons ahead for Tomekia Reed, but well-deserved. I remember the first time I saw Tomekia Reed, it was either her first or second year at Jackson State. The SWAC tournament was in Birmingham, but it was still at the Bill Harris Arena at the multiplex. It wasn't at Bartow on the campus of UAB. And I arrived, the tournament was already underway. I walked in the door. Jackson State was playing, I think it was the championship game. I think I drove up from Atlanta. I know I drove up, but I think it was the championship game against Southern. I think the game had just started, and Tomekia Reed, as soon as I walked in, she was giving the business to one of her players, and she was like, "Get over here." And you heard it through the entire arena. And my first impression of her was the presence that she carried, and the respect that she had. And they ended up losing that game to Southern, but you saw something special with that Jackson State program, and they did not lose too many more games after that. And just being able to cover her, for the last 5 years or so, and the respect that she has, the wisdom that she has, the way not only that she coaches, but the way that she speaks, and the way that she is very reflective and intentional about the game of basketball, but also about the impact that she undoubtedly has on the lives of her players, has been really incredible to watch. And so we are entering a phase, here at HBCU Gameday. I've seen the conversation. I've heard, the pros and the cons of it, and how people feel, what happens when a coach or player moves on from an HBCU. But that's the era that we live in. And these are incredible stories that continue. I mean, can you imagine sitting back and watching Tomekia Reed coach next year for Charlotte, and whatever level of success that they have, especially if that is phenomenal success, that you're not going to sit back and say, that was what she did at Jackson State? That you will not always, in your mind, as you're sitting there watching that, associate her journey, and I would imagine, and I would hope, root for her to get to the highest levels of college coaching, or wherever she wants to turn out, coaching wise, within the game, and not only cheer for her because, that you like her, if that's the case, and you respected what she's done, but because a big part of that journey for her started at Jackson State, or Jackson State has been a big part of her journey. So in part, cheering for her is cheering for Jackson State and HBCUs at large. It is a story that I hope we continue to follow and bring you updates on what she is able to do as she moves on to Charlotte. I will always be a fan of Tomekia Reed and the things that she did at Jackson State, and I hope that she continues to have that success moving on. Now, Jackson State, as you always hear, the story's up at HBCUGameday.com, but, straight off the press release, a national search begins immediately. Man, those are some hard footsteps to follow there. Sorry for the cliche, but you're following a coach that wins over 95% of her conference games, plays a very tough and competitive out-of-conference schedule, does well, get some wins there as well, had LSU on the ropes, had the respect. You remember what Coach Ariyama from UConn had to say about Coach Reed after their game, and the level of respect that he had for her? So that's going to be a big challenge when the expectation for Jackson State women's basketball in the SWAC is to win it all. Not only to win it all, not lose at all. So that will be a challenge, and whoever comes in there, I would imagine and definitely hope that they will be a competitor and be able to put those expectations or that history in the proper perspective. Whether or not they just know, look, that's not where we're going to be this year, and I'm okay with that, or hey, that's exactly the model that we want to follow, whatever their approach may be. It'll definitely be a part of the conversation. So Tomekia Reed is off to Charlotte. Wishing her the best. The school announced that on Thursday they will have a introductory press conference. So we do have some people. Our Wally Pitt lives in Charlotte, so we do plan on being there and hearing her words at the press conference as she's introduced as the new head coach of the Charlotte. If you're old school, you call it UNCC, UNC Charlotte. They kind of got rid of that branding. They just like to be called Charlotte now, but it's right there in Charlotte, North Carolina. Tomekia Reed taking over that job. Press conference on Monday. Had a great run at Jackson State. We really enjoyed her, and I personally wish her all the best moving forward. Let us know what you think in the comments. Tomekia Reed on the move. Who would you like to take over at Jackson State, and how successful do you think Coach Reed can be moving forward? Can she replicate the things that she was able to do at Jackson State? I'm Tolly Carr at the house today. The big news, Tomekia Reed leaves Jackson State for Charlotte. We'll talk to you guys on the other side. Other side of what? I don't know. We'll talk to you a little later.